Another aspect of the economy is taxes, and this is one that provokes very strong reactions among many people. Many times we act like taxes are a theft from income that we earn rightfully so, and nobody should take any of it. It's very tempting to think, oh, if I make a lot of money, I don't want to pay any as taxes. Why? I made it. Well, there are several aspects to this. One is that nobody operates in a vacuum. Let's say even a pure investor who invests in the stock market is dependent on societal forces that allow for this investment. A police force that keeps order and the military that keeps a country safe, and many other structures that allow for that investment. So the investment didn't happen in a vacuum, it happened in a community, in a society, in a city, in a country, where many elements came to support the possibility of this investment taking place. So these investors should pay in taxes towards the keeping of all these forces that have benefited him or her. Even somebody who is gold mining in the middle of nowhere, like here, and finds gold, well, that gold, this person found it, but that gold belonged to the earth, to the planet, to every one of us. Why this prospector who, here, I don't think they even have what they call it when you buy the right to mine. In some places, people buy that right, but still, that doesn't cover for the cost of this element that was extracted from the earth. So taxing this activity makes sense to. We don't have a problem taxing what we call sin taxes, like alcohol and tobacco products that get taxed heavily because they are sinful activities. We tax the earnings of gambling. Gambling is considered like regular income for tax purposes. It's not even a capital gain. So it gets taxed higher than stock market transactions. And I guess gamblers don't lobby that much to change that. And I guess there's this sinful aspect. Then taxes. So far we have there's not a vacuum for this economic activity. The community supports the economic activity, so the tax goes back to keep the community working. Also, there's taxes are a form of insurance because farmers had done this where they shared revenue, and it's fascinating to in American team owners how they, being a pure capitalist enterprise, they band together to assure that nobody loses business, that nobody goes broke in this business. So we all want economic activity and freedom of economic activity, but we don't want people to go broke. So taxes provide a network of support for people who fall or fail in this enterprise, because there may be an element of just pure luck. let's say I'm looking at these hills over here, and let's say there are 10 hills, and one of them is very rich in gold, and half are so-so, and there are two hills don't have any gold. So then these 10 prospectors go out there mining for gold, and there's one that hits is really rich, and several that are doing okay, and two that go broke if nobody pays taxes. Now we pay taxes, the one who went really rich will end up giving us at least some level of subsistence to the two that would otherwise go broke. And this system is explained before we go mining for gold beforehand. I think most of us would agree to go with that system, to offer this insurance, so nobody goes completely broke. So the ones that hit it okay make some profit, and the one or two that hit it really good, they're rich, still rich, but at the same time they contribute more towards the ones that didn't do it. So taxes provide the structure where the economic activity takes place. Again, the economic activity doesn't occur in a vacuum, and taxes can be an insurance to avoid anyone going broke in the economic activity. Now, the trickle-down economics that has been applied many times and and it has failed in every case. It says that you reduce taxes so there's more economic activity, and then there's the trickle-down. The pie is bigger and everybody gets more pie. But that's not true. In the most recent example in America, the Trump administration provided strong tax cuts for businesses, and then businesses didn't go into capital investment, but mostly did stock repurchases. They bought their own stocks, and then the market went down, and that wasn't that great of an idea. Or they increased dividends to stockholders. But there's a demonizing of taxes that go constantly, and even people who are not making a lot of money side with that in the belief that someday they are going to make it rich and they don't want to pay a lot of taxes. If we could just agree on some basic tenets like the economic activity not happening in a vacuum and the need for social insurance to avoid suffering, then we all can be perfectly happy with paying the taxes that are due and correct. And, take estate taxes. That's a very particular tax, right? Somebody dies, and then how do we tax what they leave for their descendants? Well, again, the economic activity that this person performed didn't happen in a vacuum, so it makes sense that upon this person's death, a portion of this estate will go towards society at large. Because ultimately the state is not only the immediate family or whoever this person is giving the money to, but it's also society at large. And some people are strong benefactors because on their own volition they give tremendous amounts of money, they leave fortunes to society at large, sometimes in the form of nature preserve or an art collection to a museum, or grants for universities. obviously, small estates shouldn't pay any estate tax, but that has been relaxed to the point where people are leaving fortunes to their descendants. And again, like if the economic activity that generated this money was produced in a vacuum. To this day, in Italy, there is a system where only the oldest son in a family keeps the farm land. That was done long ago to avoid the parceling of land into smaller and smaller portions to the point where it was unproductive. So there's this very unfair system on paper where only the oldest child in the family, the oldest man, gets all the farm. Now also farmland stays as farm. They cannot be used to build housing, for instance, unless peculiar situations where a farm ends up on the path of a growing city and then it has to be converted into housing, and that's when somebody can make a juicy profit. Well, the oldest son in the family that got this entire farm. But that seems a very unfair state system because only one person benefits. But then the intent again is to avoid the micro the miniaturization of farms by dividing over and over and over. There are countries where there's not much of an income tax or other forms of tax, and most of the revenue for the government comes from a sales tax. IVA, as known in these countries, Impuesto al Valor Agregado. So people pay upon purchasing sometimes a substantial amount of taxes, as much as 20%, they say. Now that is substantial, and it seems to be a very unfair form of taxation. It's very simple, but then consumers, there's a basic level of consumption that everybody must perform: food, shelter, clothes, health, and paying the same no matter how much you make seems very unfair. There's taxes on fuel, and many people complain about that because when you buy fuel for your car, you may be paying easily half of the price in taxes, depending on the country. That's in the United States. In Europe, it's much larger. But then there are many societal costs that are included with your gas. Roads and security and safety, and even medical costs. Other forms of taxation, any other thoughts? Yes, Jimmy. If I collect my video games and sell them for a profit, should I pay tax? Well, Jimmy, that's a very good question. You are selling your video games for a profit. Now, that's a capital gain because you invested in something and you sold it with a profit. yes, you should pay a tax. Now, this adds an element that is very important. The tax perhaps should be based on how long you held these video games. If you had these video games for years, you're an adult now and you had these games since childhood, this is a long-term capital gain tax. And many places distinguish taxes that capital gains that are less or more than 1 year. If the capital gain was realized over 1 year, there's less tax than when the capital gain was realized in less than 1 year. Now, this system should be applied even in finite amounts of time. And I will propose that we pay taxes, capital gain taxes, not only less for when it's over 1 year, but also less when it's over 5, 10, 50 years, 100 years. Let's say somebody had land for 100 years in a family. That should be a relatively low tax. Now, conversely, there should be higher taxes for people who make their capital gain in less than a month. If somebody buys a house and turns around and flips it, well, there should be a higher tax for that. And the shorter the time for that flip, the higher the tax. So held for less than a month, higher tax. Held less than a week, higher tax. Held less than a day, a very high tax. And then it gets really funny. Held less than an hour, maybe your tax should be 50% if you have made a profit, let's say trading in less than an hour. And then we had these incredible electronic transactions going on where the buy and sell may be done in minutes, even seconds. I would propose that if you make a capital gain in less than a minute, you pay 90% in taxes. If you make the capital gain in less than an hour, you pay 50% in capital gains taxes. Because what kind of value have you added to the economy in this 1 minute you realize this transaction? Some people are going to justify that they add fluidity to the market. Well, okay, maybe you do, but still, you just get lucky. And so you're going to pay 90% taxes on the 1 minute profit. Can you compensate losses against gains? And yeah, maybe you can, like other capital gains. But your net profit, if it's done in less than a minute, should be 90% taxed. Now, there's also the regulation, and sometimes this is a form of taxation. Let's say we talked before about owning a bazooka, and how you had to register this bazooka and pay for that, and get a license and train to operate this bazooka and pay for that. And then you had to get insurance to have a bazooka because of the tremendous liability you could incur by blowing up things. So you had to pay for that. You could consider that a form of taxation because, again, the collected is the context for your economic activity, or activity in this case, the bazooka, and you're using the bazooka for some economic activity. there's another form of tax that we rarely apply, and that will be basically paying for collective, for the common we consume. I don't think there's a single place where anyone pays for the air that is consumed. I'm not talking about breathing, but let's talk about air consumed by a car. That should be in your gas price, because that fuel is going to need oxygen to burn, and that oxygen you're sucking it in from the atmosphere, and from me you're keeping it from me from breathing. And then if there's an industry, or I mean a bigger form of transportation, an airplane is consuming a tremendous amount of air, very thin air, that should be paid for. Or imagine an industry that is consuming very large quantities of air. This should be quantified and you should pay for it. I guess this could be considered a form of tax. Same for water. We pay for fuel, but fuel doesn't burn without oxygen, so we should be paying for the oxygen used to burn the fuel. We should be paying for the pollution we create. The same way we pay to have our trash collected, nobody expects to have their trash collected for free. So why anybody should expect that the pollution should be free? They should be paying for that, producing that pollution. That is, again, a form of taxation. And this may sound overwhelming that we're going to be paying for all these, but yes, it's common sense. We go to a store, and no matter how many items we put in our car, we pay for all of them. We don't expect to go to a store and say, well, I have so many things here, I should get some for free. Well, maybe in some individual transactions you get a deal like that, but not in your regular store. You pay for everything you have in your shopping cart. And everybody pays the same. Unless you're talking about industries where the pricing is constantly changing, and so people on a plane may have paid very different prices for the same service. But that's another story. That's about pricing. Oh yeah, pricing. Should that be the next one on economic activity? I think the next one for me is gonna be just chill here at sunset. After the sunset at dusk. Lighting. Might be raining again.